by scratching the surface, you get a terrible shock. It's such a...
Queen Camilla had entered the private meeting expecting a routine discussion about royal possessions. Instead, the executors placed a sealed inventory before her and confirmed a decision that could not be negotiated, delayed, or reversed. Diana's most private jewels would pass directly to Catherine, Princess of Wales. Camilla did not argue at first. She simply stared at the page, gripping the arm of her chair as the meaning settled over the room like a final judgment. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla had been summoned to Clarence House, the London residence used by Charles and the Queen, for what she believed was a review of historic jewelry ahead of a future exhibition. Two estate executors, the people legally responsible for carrying out inheritance instructions, sat across from her beside a senior royal advisor. Charles remained close, yet distant. He knew what the sealed inventory contained, and his silence felt like a warning. The chief executor opened the document and spoke plainly. Diana's private jewelry collection, including pieces never absorbed into the crown's official holdings, had been assigned to Catherine for personal custody and eventual transfer to the next generation. The crown's official holdings were objects controlled for the monarchy rather than personally owned. These pieces stood outside that system. They belonged to Diana's private estate, and the decision was final. Camilla lowered the papers. Her face tightened when she asked whether even one part of the collection would remain under the authority of the reigning queen. The advisor answered no. The queen consort, meaning the wife of the king rather than a monarch ruling in her own right, had no power to redirect the inheritance. Charles had no such power either. That answer hurt, but his silence hurt more. Camilla turned toward the king, searching his face for outrage, resistance, anything that suggested he had been blindsided beside her. Charles offered none. He had already understood the legal position. He had already accepted that Diana's jewels could not be redistributed. In that moment, she realized he had entered the room prepared for her devastation. Then came the second blow. Catherine had received a letter that morning. Camilla removed her glasses and placed them carefully beside the inventory. She asked the executors and the advisor to leave. The door closed into silence. "You knew this was coming," she whispered. Charles did not deny it. The executors had settled ownership. But the deeper danger now lay in what Diana's jewels seemed to declare about Camilla, Catherine, and the woman whose memory still shaped the future of the crown. The jewels were small enough to fit inside velvet boxes, yet they carried the emotional weight of an entire royal era. To Catherine, they represented a mother-in-law she never met, but whose shadow shaped her marriage. To Camilla, they embodied a comparison she could never fully escape. And to Diana's sons, they remained fragments of a mother whose memory had survived every attempt to contain, redefine, or quietly move beyond it. Catherine sat alone at Adelaide Cottage and read the executor's letter twice. Adelaide Cottage was the Windsor home she shared with William, away from palace life. It placed her in contact with Diana's personal inheritance, not a ceremonial royal collection controlled for official duties. These were family objects, carrying private memories rather than public authority. Catherine felt honored, but the honor came with a burden. One appearance in a familiar bracelet or pair of earrings could awaken old comparisons, reopen arguments about Diana's marriage, and make the princess seem as though she were stepping into another woman's identity. She had spent years respecting that legacy, without allowing it to consume her own. William entered and found her holding the folder in silence. The prince understood. He sat beside her and said she was not being asked to replace his mother. She was being trusted to protect what had belonged to her. His words steadied Catherine, but they did not remove the weight. The inventory deepened that weight. It listed gifts, but also birthday pieces, handwritten notes, and jewels linked to family occasions. Some were rarely photographed. Others had never belonged to royal duty. Their value came from memory, and memory could wound more sharply than diamonds. Camilla understood that truth from the opposite side. A documented palace account showed that she had once asked whether selected pieces could enter a monarchy-wide jewelry review, meaning an official survey of items available for royal use. Her request had been refused without explanation. Now the queen realized the inheritance process had begun before she was told. Catherine closed the folder and looked at William. She would accept the collection, she said, but only if Harry was formally informed, and the jewels remained tied to Diana's children. The future king paused, then agreed. His brother could not discover this through a headline. Camilla dismissed her staff early at Clarence's house. She sat beside a cold fireplace with the inventory unopened nearby. She was not grieving gemstones alone. She was grieving what their destination said about her place in the family. Years of tension had prepared the ground, but one palace incident had forced the executors to act before the collection became the center of something far more dangerous. The point of no return did not arrive in a courtroom or during a public ceremony. It came after a private state banquet rehearsal, when a velvet tray was carried into a palace dressing room, and one of Diana's most personal pieces appeared among jewels being considered for Camilla. What followed was brief, controlled, and almost completely hidden. But that single moment convinced the executors that the collection could no longer remain in administrative uncertainty. For years, Diana's jewels had remained apart from the Crown's institutional collection. That collection meant items held for official royal use, rather than personal ownership. Access to her pieces required special permission, yet changing palace roles had blurred who could inspect them, catalog them, or suggest them for ceremonial events. As Camilla's position grew, her office pushed for a complete review of jewelry linked to royal spouses, citing insurance records, display rules, and administrative order. Then the mistake happened. During preparations for a major diplomatic banquet, a dresser presented Camilla with a sapphire and pearl bracelet from Diana's private collection. The queen lifted it from the tray. Before she could examine it properly, a palace archivist stepped forward and explained that the piece was protected and unavailable for use. Camilla froze. Only a few staff members were present, but the correction felt public. She asked why something stored inside a royal vault could not be considered for the reigning queen. The archivist repeated that the bracelet belonged to a private estate, not the royal wardrobe. Her embarrassment hardened into anger. Catherine heard about the incident through a documented account filed by the jewelry office. She requested a private meeting with Charles and brought the bracelet's archive record with her. The princess did not accuse Camilla of taking it deliberately. She did, however, insist that Diana's personal effects could never be treated as available wardrobe assets. Catherine placed the record on the king's desk. "This cannot happen again," she said. Charles understood at once. The dispute had moved beyond catalogs and storage rules. It had become a question of trust between two royal households, and any delay would deepen the wound. The executors reviewed the original inheritance documents and invoked an early transfer clause, a legal provision allowing the jewels to be moved sooner when confusion threatened their private purpose. Charles signed an acknowledgement that the palace would not contest the decision. Catherine left. The king remained standing, staring at his signature as though he already knew Camilla would call it betrayal. The bracelet returned to its box, but the insult Camilla felt, and the boundary Catherine defended, were now moving toward one unavoidable confrontation. And neither woman was prepared to step aside quietly. Camilla did not summon Catherine for a polite discussion. She wanted an answer from the woman whose name stood between her and a collection loaded with memory, status, and pain. When Catherine entered the sitting room, there were no aides, no secretaries, and no legal advisors. Camilla remained standing beside the window. She did not offer tea. She held the executor's letter in hand and asked a question that cut through years of royal restraint. Catherine had agreed to come to Clarence's house without William because refusal would only deepen the divide. Clarence's house was the London residence used by Charles and Camilla, but this meeting belonged to neither household officially. The princess understood that resentment, once allowed to harden, could poison every encounter between the two women. Camilla saw the transfer as more than inheritance. To her, it declared that Catherine had become the female guardian of royal continuity, meaning the person trusted to carry the monarchy's legacy into the next generation. The queen believed that message pushed her to the edge of the story she had spent years trying to enter. "Did you use the bracelet incident to have me excluded?" Camilla asked. Catherine heard the accusation beneath the controlled voice. She saw the letter crease inside the queen's hand. Then she answered without raising her own. She had not asked to inherit Diana's identity, and she would not accept blame for protecting belongings that had never belonged to Camilla. The words struck hard. Camilla admitted, through that conversation, what she had never said publicly. Every step in her royal life had been measured against a woman who was no longer there to answer, forgive, or defend herself. Now the jewels would make that comparison permanent. They would tell the world that Camilla held the title, while Catherine held the memory. Catherine did not apologize. She promised she would never wear the pieces to humiliate the queen, or turn Diana's belongings into weapons. But she would not surrender custody, seek shared control, or pretend the collection meant nothing to William and Harry. Camilla placed the letter on the table. "And what am I supposed to do with that?" "Accept that not everything connected to this family belongs to the crown," Catherine replied. Silence swallowed the room completely. Catherine reached the door, then looked back. Camilla wiped one eye and straightened before the princess could speak. Catherine left without naming what she had seen, knowing that victory would be the cruelest interpretation. Emotion had reached its breaking point. Yet neither woman held authority. That power rested inside documents, signatures, and family instructions designed to withstand pressure, grievance, and even the wishes of a king. Royal families are built on hierarchy, but private inheritance obeys a different kind of power. Titles could shape ceremonies, control access, and command households, yet they could not dissolve the clause sitting before Charles. The language was direct. Diana's private jewels were to remain within the personal line of her sons and pass into the care of the woman entrusted with protecting that legacy for their children. The executors had concluded that woman was Catherine. Charles sat across from the chief executor and understood the limits of his crown. Crown property meant objects held for the monarchy and used in official duty, while private property belonged to an individual and followed inheritance instructions. Diana's collection fell outside his authority. No palace preference, title, or request could legally redirect it. Catherine qualified because she was William's wife, the mother of the direct heirs, and the family member trusted to preserve objects for George, Charlotte, and Louis. Custody did not mean unrestricted ownership. It meant responsibility, protection, and eventual transfer to Diana's descendants. Charles still searched for compromise. He asked whether Camilla might display selected pieces without receiving ownership. The chief executor answered that temporary access could weaken the protective clause, a legal condition designed to preserve the original purpose of an inheritance. The king heard the warning clearly. Any exception could become a claim. That possibility reopened old pain. Charles knew a challenge would drag his first marriage back into public judgment and place William directly against him. He wanted to ease Camilla's humiliation, yet he could not do so by disregarding Diana's wishes. Then the executor produced a handwritten instruction. Charles read the note slowly. It directed that the jewels must never be absorbed into the general wardrobe of a future royal spouse. Camilla was not named, but the meaning was impossible to miss. The collection had been protected against the confusion now surrounding it. William held limits as well. Neither the prince nor Catherine could sell the central pieces, divide them for convenience, or remove them from the family line. She would serve as guardian, not conqueror. Charles folded the note once and pushed it across the desk. "Repeat the final position," he said. The executor did. "Then there will be no challenge." The senior executor watched Charles sign the non-contestation record, a document confirming that the palace would not dispute the transfer. His hand trembled slightly. For one moment, the monarch looked less like a king than a husband and father facing consequences no title could erase. The signature ended the legal argument. It also activated new access lists, vault permissions, and ceremonial restrictions that would turn Camilla's private disappointment into a locked, undeniable reality. The fallout did not begin with shouting. It began with a keycard that no longer worked. Days after the executor's ruling, Camilla arrived for a scheduled jewelry review and discovered that access to Diana's private storage compartment had been removed from her household's authorization. A palace official stepped forward to explain the change, but the queen had already understood. The legal decision was no longer a document. It had become a locked door, standing directly in front of her. Camilla tried the card once more. The light remained red. Her equerry, an officer who manages a senior royal's daily arrangements, offered to contact security, but she stopped him. Calling attention to the refusal would expose the truth before every member of staff. Her title could open palaces, yet it could not open this compartment. Palace security had already changed the vault permissions. Diana's jewels disappeared from shared cataloging schedules, and a small custodial team approved by Catherine and the executors took control. Ceremonial plans changed as well. Pieces once considered for exhibitions or commemorative events could appear only as part of Diana's family legacy, never as additions to the Queen's official wardrobe. Camilla returned to her car without protest. She removed her gloves and stared at her hands. Then she told her private secretary, through a recorded account prepared for the royal household, that she had wanted one chance to prove Diana's history no longer threatened her place. Anger had protected her before. Now grief entered where anger had failed. Courtiers noticed the shift immediately. Some began directing questions about legacy objects to Catherine's office instead of Camilla's household. That change mattered, because control over memory often carries more influence than control over ceremony. The princess had not demanded that authority, but the inheritance had placed it in her hands. Catherine felt no triumph. At Kensington Palace, she opened a small case beside William and found a delicate bracelet linked to Diana's private family life. The piece had never been defined by state occasions or public duty. Its meaning came from intimacy. Catherine closed the case without trying it on. "I'm not ready," she said. William placed his hand over hers. He told her there was no deadline for grief, and no duty required her to wear his mother's memory before she could carry it. That evening, Charles found Camilla removing her jewelry. She placed her official necklace inside its case and said, "A crown does not stop people from remembering who came before you." The vault had closed to her. But Charles was about to open another door by meeting William alone, not as sovereign and heir, but as a father facing his son. There were no red boxes on the table, and no advisors waiting outside the room. Charles had asked William to meet him alone because the dispute had moved beyond jewelry, protocol, and inheritance. It had reached the place both men usually avoided: Diana's memory and the damage left inside their family. For once, the king did not speak first as monarch. He spoke as a father who knew that defending his wife could no longer mean denying his son's grief. Charles chose Highgrove because it belonged to private life, not government. Highgrove was his country home, while red boxes were the locked cases used to carry official state papers. Their absence told William that no royal order was coming. The king wanted a conversation, and the prince intended to give him an answer. William spoke first. The jewels would remain with Catherine under the executor's terms. His mother's belongings would not become bargaining pieces in a fight over Camilla's position. The future king made clear that protection was not revenge, but he would not weaken the boundary now established. Charles accepted the force of that anger. He admitted, through their private conversation, that he had underestimated how deeply the bracelet incident wounded his son. His instinct had been to protect Camilla from humiliation, even when that protection made him seem careless with Diana's memory. William's voice softened, but his position did not. He feared that without firm limits, his mother would slowly be absorbed into palace history until only the convenient parts remained. The jewels mattered because they preserved something personal that ceremony could not rewrite. Charles then repeated Camilla's private admission from their conversation at Clarence House. No title, she had said, had freed her from comparison with Diana. William listened without interrupting. For the first time, he saw that her anger came partly from insecurity, not merely possession. A narrow compromise emerged. William promised Catherine would not debut the jewels at an event where Camilla was present, or use them to create a public contrast. Charles promised his household would never again seek access to the collection. "I will not challenge the inheritance," the king said. "Then I will not turn it into a punishment," William answered. They shook hands. The past was not repaired, but its boundaries were finally clear. William later told Catherine, and relief entered her silence. Charles told Camilla at Clarence House. She closed her eyes, accepted the finality, and asked only that she not be publicly humiliated. Inside the family, restraint had replaced confrontation. Outside, one photograph at Kensington Palace was about to turn their private peace into a national judgment none of them could control or escape. By sunrise, the private inheritance had become a national drama. Broadcasters spoke of legacy, rivalry, and a symbolic passing of the torch. Newspapers placed Catherine and Diana side by side, while Camilla's solemn departure from Clarence House appeared beneath unforgiving headlines. Yet one moment captured the public mood more powerfully than any commentary. Catherine arriving at Kensington Palace, carrying a small blue jewelry case as a silent crowd gathered behind the barriers. The executors released a carefully worded confirmation before breakfast. Diana's private jewelry had passed into Catherine's custody under established inheritance instructions, meaning the legally recorded wishes governing who must protect the collection. The statement stressed family preservation, not victory. That distinction mattered because one careless phrase could turn grief into a public contest between two royal women. Buckingham Palace acknowledged the decision while defending Camilla's constitutional role, the official duties she performed beside the king. Kensington Palace added that the jewels would remain protected for Diana's descendants and appear only with sensitivity. Both households wanted restraint. The country wanted a symbol. Catherine felt the pressure immediately. She told her team there would be no celebration, no triumphant statement, and no commemorative portrait. Every future appearance would be examined for signs that she had defeated the Queen. The princess refused to feed that story. Camilla watched a morning broadcast place Diana, Catherine, and herself in sequence. She turned off the television before the discussion ended. Then she instructed her aide to keep every engagement unchanged. One front page hardened the wound. Beneath Catherine's quiet arrival, the headline declared, "Diana's legacy chooses the future." Camilla's household reacted with fury because the words cast the Queen as yesterday's figure, pushed aside by a woman who represented tomorrow. Outside Kensington Palace, flowers and handwritten cards gathered behind the barriers. As Catherine's car approached, an elderly woman raised a photograph of Diana. The crowd fell silent. Catherine saw it, lowered her head, and understood that the case beside her carried more than jewelry. It carried unfinished national grief. William moved quickly. Through private calls to editors and broadcasters, he urged them to stop framing the transfer as Catherine defeating Camilla. His intervention surprised palace officials and honored the promise he had made to Charles. Hours later, Camilla attended a charity reception. Her smile remained strained, but she spoke warmly and never mentioned the jewels. She understood duty could not erase pain, but it could prevent pain from becoming vengeance, spectacle, or another permanent fracture inside the monarchy she served before the public. The nation had chosen its symbols. Catherine now had to decide whether Diana's inheritance would deepen the rivalry or become the gesture that finally ended it. Catherine's final decision was neither surrender nor victory. She would accept the jewels, preserve them for Diana's grandchildren, and wear them only when their meaning served remembrance rather than rivalry. Camilla would not receive the collection, and the executor's judgment would not be reversed. Yet the Princess of Wales refused to let gemstones become weapons in a conflict that had already consumed too much of the royal family's emotional life. Catherine approved a family trust, a legal arrangement created to protect property for relatives across generations. The most important pieces would remain secure for George, Charlotte, and Louis. Charlotte could eventually receive selected personal items, while the collection stayed tied to Diana's direct descendants, rather than drifting into the royal wardrobe. The princess defined how the jewels could appear in public. She would wear them at memorial occasions, family milestones, or events linked to causes Diana had supported. She would not use them to attract attention, provoke comparison, or suggest that Camilla's place beside Charles had been defeated by memory. Catherine told her staff in a private recorded briefing that the inheritance proved nothing about victory. It gave her responsibility for objects carrying love, grief, and unfinished family history. Her words removed celebration from the decision and replaced it with duty. Charles brought Camilla a copy of the custodial plan. The Queen read it slowly and found a promise that the jewels would never be used to diminish her. Disappointment remained, but her fear of humiliation began to loosen. Catherine then sent Camilla a handwritten note. She acknowledged the pain of living beneath constant comparison and promised that Diana's memory would not become a campaign against her. She did not apologize for accepting the jewels. She offered dignity instead. Camilla read the note alone, folded it, and placed it inside the executor's original envelope. When Charles entered, she said, "She has drawn the line without making it cruel." It was the first time the Queen spoke of Catherine without anger since the ruling. Charles accepted that respecting Diana's private legacy was necessary to preserve trust with his sons. William accepted that protecting his mother did not require humiliating his father's wife. Their agreement prevented the inheritance from becoming a permanent rupture. The verdict was final. Rank could not erase personal history, and the crown could not own every object touched by royal life. Catherine became Diana's guardian, not her replacement. Camilla accepted that queenship had boundaries. The case is closed. The rivalry lost its power, and remembrance finally became protection rather than punishment. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.